Welcome to Biblical Archaeology in 5. Did you know that the ancient Egyptians, they personified all the powers of nature as gods? Thus they had a god of the sky, the earth, the sea, etc. They believed that every action that occurred in nature was a direct result of a divine will. So a god of sea was causing the sea to go crazy. Now, is that how we think today? Or do we have what Buford T. Justice in Smoking the Bandit would say is, we have a failure to communicate? Well, I would say yes. And so the first thing I would have us think about is when we read the scripture, we have to put ourselves back into the context in which it was written. What was Moses saying to 15th century BC Hebrew folk who had lived a long time in Egypt and were essentially Egyptian pagans? So how was he going to write to them versus how you and I might think today? With our modern empirical glasses, we think in terms of impersonal forces affecting nature, science, things like evolution, geology, physics, etc. And so, we do have a failure to communicate. In other words, we have to be very careful when we're reading Genesis 1 that we don't try to make it strictly into some kind of science textbook because our current argument is against evolution. No, we have to step back, read it through Moses' lenses, if you will, in which he was an apologist for Yahweh to the Hebrew people who were steeped in this thought that it was these divine forces, these pagan gods, that were causing nature to act. And so, what does Moses do? Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created. It was Yahweh who created. It was His divine will that created all that is, whether natural forces or the events of mankind. Yahweh is the one. And so, when we read Genesis 1, let's let biblical archaeology help us to understand that Genesis 1 is an argument against paganism. It's a polemic, an argument. And so, in the episodes that will come soon, I'm going to build on this idea that the Egyptians saw the creation in terms of personal forces, gods who were expressing their divine will, versus Moses who sees it as a personal force, known as Yahweh, who is creating the world, bringing order to the chaos. So let's tune in episodes to come and see what Moses was trying to say to that first 15th century BC audience.